Hey everyone, it's Jordan here. I just wanted to give a bit of a preamble to this first ever episode of Not Part of the Plan. On behalf of Jason and I, we just want to say thanks for listening. You'll find in this podcast we talk about a lot of hard things, a lot of hard issues, and it might be a bit of a trigger for you. Please listen with care. And also know that this is our first ever episode. We don't really know what we're doing. The sound quality isn't great, but that's not what it's about. And so we're putting it out there. Thankful for the opportunity to share our stories with you, and we hope that this is a meaningful time for you.
It took some time to think about this question.
It just seems like the bar for me
I
is
kind of
so...
relate that. All right, let's do this. Hi, I'm Jason,
And I'm Jordan.
and this is Not Part of the Plan.
All right. Welcome to our podcast. To be honest, Jason, I don't really know how to start exactly. I've never really done this whole podcast thing, but I'm really excited to begin this journey with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm probably all of the above at this point. But yeah, I'm just excited to get going. So, I mean, tell us some things about yourself.
Yeah, I guess it's a good way to start. I live in the Okanagan in BC in Canada, and I've been here for about 8 years now. And yeah, I just find myself in this place of life where I didn't really expect to be. And so that's kind of part of the reason why we're doing this. I know for both of us, there's some story here of how we ended up where we did, and how that wasn't really part of our plan. So that's a little bit about me, just where I'm in my 30s and just living here in the Okanagan. How about you?
Yeah, I'm a bit farther away from where you are. I'm in Nanaimo. It's about 6 or 7 hours from the mainland, so not too far away from where you are. But the place we both grew up in. It's my hometown. I've been here my entire life. Went to school here. Own a business here now for the last 9 years. Yeah, I mean, I think I can reiterate what you said. Sometimes I think, yeah, this is not where I expected to be
Mm-hmm.
in life, but yeah.
Yeah, I know we've been friends for a long time. Maybe that's part of the story too. Probably I moved to Nanaimo for grade one, so I guess I was 6 or 7 years old, and that's where we would have met first in grade one. And so we've known each other for 30 years almost. So it's a pretty long time when you when you put it like that.
Yeah, definitely long and lots of stories, and it's time to grow up together. So yeah, I mean, like I think you said the other day, if you had said this is what we were going to do, probably even a month or two ago, you probably wouldn't have believed it. So
Yeah, maybe that's worth telling the story. Like you texted me a week or two ago saying, "Hey, we should do a podcast." What made you decide to text me with that idea?
yeah, to be honest, I'm a bit scattered often in my head, and I get these flashes of being passionate about something. And for a long time, I've really wanted to tell a bit of my story, whether that be about some depression or some trauma in the last 5 or 6 years of my life, and just could never write it down, and never was good at that. And I just, on a whim, we've been talking on and off for a bunch of months now, and I thought, I don't know what, maybe text you first, but I maybe was probably looking for a bit of validation. And you're my best friend, and you'd be able to be like, you'd be rational. I feel like you'd probably be the rational person about it. But yeah, I don't know. I just like went on a whim, expressing an interest, and then I got your response and was excited.
Yeah, when I read it too, my first gut reaction was yes. And that was, not really something I contemplated or thought long about. It was just, yeah, let's do it. And that's not really who I am normally, but that was my response. And for me too, right? Like similar, I needed a way to get all the swirling ideas and the swirling thoughts in my head out. And not, I found I was having a hard time doing that on my own, right? So I needed to lean on a friend and someone like you who has also gone through difficult things to just to help with my own wellness and my own mental health. And 'cause that's been, yeah, basically all I've been focusing on now for better part of 5 or 6 months. And I'm glad you texted me. I'm glad that we're trying this out. I don't really know how it's going to go, and I don't really know exactly where we're going to take this, but I think both of us have expressed like this is more for our own well-being, and if it just so happens to help other people, like great. But I think for me, like I'm just in a place where I need to get it out, and what better way than talking over it or talking through this stuff with a friend, right? With my best friend. So that's my plan with all of this.
Immediately, and I've told you this before, but immediately after you texted me back, I got excited, and then the doubt just crept in so quickly. And I was like, I don't know the first thing. And what about this? And my mind just went so quick. And I'm glad you were like, well, we should talk about it. And because I probably would have just dismissed it if you had. Um, so I'm glad, yeah, you want to give it a shot. And I'm a firm believer in being really open, especially with the hard, gritty, tough subjects. So look forward to it, but it's also terrifying.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Yeah, like anytime you open yourself up, or that vulnerability that needs to be expressed, that's not easy to do, even with someone you've been friends with for almost 30 years, right? It's never
Yeah.
easy to do it. So I'm just thankful that we're going to try it.
I mean, I kind of briefly mentioned some of my fears initially, but I mean, just right off the bat, like, what do you think the challenges you're going to face doing this? I mean, I think it's kind of obvious. Tough subject matter is going to be hard no matter what, but
yeah, and on top of that too, I think my role as a teacher is actually part of what makes me nervous to do this, or a challenge I'm going to face for myself. In today's world, anything you put out there, people have access to, like through the internet is what I mean. And my students are out there, and they've followed along with my journey here or there. Some of them have, right? And I think for me to be raw and open and just honest with my emotions, I do have a fear of how that will come across, how I come across. And I think another layer on top of all that is, as a person of faith, as a Christian, I have I carry on myself this feeling like I need to have life figured out, or I need to trust God, and therefore if I show weakness in that trust, then I'm doing other people a disservice in their own faith. Like it's almost like this responsibility I feel in my students to show strength in faith, so that they in turn will show strength in faith. Which, as I say this out loud, I know it doesn't make sense, but it's what a fear I have, and that's definitely one of the bigger challenges for me. I think too, like when you're battling depression, uh, feeling motivated to do anything is challenging, and there are so many reasons that just pop into your head, reasons for you not to try or not to do something, or that it's not worth it, or that there's no purpose in it. And so I'm really trying, anytime there's this flicker of motivation or flicker of an idea that feels even a little bit right, to try it and just to give it a shot. And so that's what I'm going to try and do with this too.
That's awesome to hear that you're giving things a shot, and even if you're slightly wavering in that direction, that's great to hear. Yeah, like I can understand a bit of that too. Depression a bit, and sometimes, like I said, I get that flicker of passion or excitement or hope, and it's quickly taken down. So I'm thankful that there's two of us doing it, and yeah.
Oh man, that makes it so much easier.
Yeah,
to do it with somebody, right?
It's not like one person carrying the entire load.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, going back to what you said about being a teacher and a Christian, and your faith, and also growing up, in a Christian community, and I still have faith. I feel like I've stepped a bit away. Now, I'm just on a bit of a journey back, but I could totally understand that. I feel like most of my life, I was just like, you got to be strong in your faith. Like the Bible talks about it so much. But then I also have learned that I think you have to be even weaker. Like no one ever talks about like being super vulnerable and super weak. Like that's when I feel like God uses you the most. I feel like God will use you no matter what, but that's a special time. Like when you've got nothing else, you're at your lowest point. I feel like he's there to pick you up. It's funny, I haven't mentioned God. I haven't talked about God in a long time since I've been talking to you. So, but yeah. No.
Well, yeah, and I'm not sure how much we'll dive into the ideas of faith and Christianity in this podcast, and however many episodes we end up doing. I'm sure we will, right? Like it's part of my identity, and even when it's weak, or even when there's anger or questions or doubts, I can't necessarily shake it, right? So it's always going to be a part of the story for me, and I think for you too, right? So I'm sure we'll touch on it here or there, but definitely. I wouldn't say that's going to be like the only focus, right? Is faith or anything. So maybe it's good to go back a little bit more, and if you want, we can talk a bit more about like why us two doing this, more than just our shared stories of there's some trauma and grief here, but which I guess we haven't really talked about yet, but we'll get into more. But just our friendship, like what do you kind of remember from the early days?
Yeah, I mean, when I took some time to think about this question, I was like, I kind of realized that my memories are a bit scattered from my childhood, due to some traumas. So I find it's just like a bit of missing chunks. But I remember elementary school, but more like you were there, but we weren't really that close, like super good friends. I just remember you played you liked soccer. Yeah, I remember general things that you're just an easygoing kid. But it wasn't up until like grade 7, grade 8, where I think we all started to hang out more and play more sports, hockey and intramurals in our Christian school, and so I'd say at about grade 10, I'd say we started to maybe become better friends. And at that point I was very good friends with, what was another one of our close friends, Jeff, and who I know you've been close with since you were a kid. I always found you guys hung out a lot more than I did. I kind of just tagged along. Yeah.
If I can jump in there, it's kind of funny you say that, because like my memory, yeah, in elementary school, I remember scattered things too, and with Jeff too. But later on, I remember feeling like the tag along for you two. So it's kind of funny how the memories work, and how friendships kind of shift and things like that. But I definitely agree, like in grade 10 probably was when maybe we just got to that like deeper level of friendship, right? Sort of trust each other with the issues or things that were going on. And before that, it was more that just elementary school. Like I do remember playing N64 at your house or
Mhm.
knee hockey or some of those things. And we lived
Yeah.
pretty close, so we did spend some time together. But yeah, yeah, high school was a special time for our friendship, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we were because you lived so close, right? It was like almost every lunch, we were going down to your place to eat your bread and to play Counter Strike. So,
Yeah, that's true.
it's I feel like that kind of is what cemented, like, because we lived so close, it was like we were either playing poker with the people, all our friends close to us, or hot tub or youth group. Yeah, I just feel like I think that's what started to cement us. Like you said, I think we started to trust each other a bit, and so near the end of school, I'd say we were pretty close, and you kind of remained near Nimo for a while, and
Hmm.
so
Yeah, and then right around how old was I when I kind of left Nanaimo? I guess I would have been like 22. I went to Edmonton, and
yeah,
then
that's right. Edmonton.
yeah, went to Edmonton and finished some more schooling there, my teaching degree. And as often happens with friendships, I think when you're not living in the same place and you're not seeing each other regularly, it's a little bit harder to maintain that friendship. But I know even if we weren't always calling each other up or whatever, like anytime I came home, it was it was just like the old days, right? Like it was just very very easy to get back into the friendships there, and yeah, I always appreciated how we had those real conversations. Lots of time in the hot tub discussing whatever, right? Girls or what else?
Yeah, life
Girls.
problems, girl problems, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a lot of
So,
those. So, yeah.
and then of course we now there's even a further level of that shared experience, right? And with some of the health trauma that you've gone through, that me more on the caregiver side have gone through. So
Yeah.
yeah, is this being a good time to jump into that, or should we? Anything else we should talk about first?
Um. Yeah. No, I think we can jump into that. Yeah, into the shared health. It's like a whole nother thing to think about and talk
Hmm.
about. But yeah, I mean,
I guess we could say like, yeah, I mean, up until that point, say about that 6 years ago or so, um, would you say your life had gone to plan?
yeah, I would definitely say that. I was just about to get married. I was buying a business the month before I got married. Yeah, I mean, things are all right. I mean, they weren't perfect, but I was happy. I was playing a lot of sports. I was running long distance. I loved doing that stuff. I'd say I was decently happy, working a lot, but yeah, I mean, it all kind of came crashing down a little bit. I started to I started to notice little changes in my body and pain sitting down, and we'll just go into brief, but it eventually got super bad. I couldn't lay down without a lot of pain in my back, which I usually had pain in my back, but um, it just got to the point where I couldn't lay down and sleep. I had to sleep like sitting up, and it was about 2 months of that. It was just horrible. Like no one, the doctor didn't know what was going on, and you know, fast forward to just after my birthday, I'm standing or I'm laying down in a urologist's office because I'm like just about to pass out because I'm so tired and sick. And he's like, "You have cancer." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" But at that point, I just didn't care. I was in so much pain. I was just like, "Let's get on with where we're going, which is to the hospital." My wife, distinctly remember, she started to cry, and I was really curt with her. I was just like, "Listen, it's happening." Like I had no sympathy for her at all. And I was like, looking back, I'm like, man, that was such harsh news to find out. Of course, she was upset. So Yeah, that just started it. From then on, it was a whole other experience of what I life is so different after that.
Mm.
I I really feel like that was just the start of a new life. If I was really honest, like I'm a completely different person. I feel like now, 5 years later, like it just changed everything. Good, bad, crappy. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, I'd like to hear that question back to you. I think it's a great question.
I can't remember the
I
question. I
mean,
was
it
so
was
absorbed in what you were sharing.
yeah. I mean, the question was, like up until, I mean, just before you got married, you were, we were already living in Vernon, I believe. I can't remember. No,
We got married about a year before we moved to Vernon.
that's right. Yeah, we were a year
Yeah,
apart in marriages, but
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
were
So
on the way to starting a new life,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Honestly, like when you think about how life should be when you're younger, I would say I found my wife at university, right? We fell in love in university in the dorms, right? And we did everything together. We shared life. She was a teacher, I was a teacher, and we got jobs at the same school. We worked in the same department. We lived in Vernon for a year and then bought a house, right? Kind of like check, check, check,
Mhm.
all the things that you're supposed to do as you're building a life together. And yeah, her health story. So she noticed a lump, and we got it checked out. And at first, it was, well, there's nothing to be worried about. I don't remember all the medical terms. That's part of my memory. That's just kind of like blanked out now. But it was considered um, benign and not something to worry about. And it kind of kept bothering her, in that it was increasing in size, and so they checked it out again and said, well, we might as well remove it, even though it's nothing to worry about. We'll just remove it so that it doesn't bother you anymore. And in that process, they removed it and found out it was cancerous. Um, it's not your typical breast cancer that you hear a lot about in the media, and all the fundraising efforts, and that's a very common type of cancer. This was not a common type of cancer, and it originated in her breast, but it was considered very unlikely that she would survive past 5 years. After a surgery to remove as much of the tissue that was compromised as possible, uh, it was determined that the margins were clear, and which was a really good sign. And so the doctors are very positive. They're very confident. And 1 year passed, and 2 years passed, and we were told if you want, you can start trying to have kids. And 3 years passed, 4 years passed. We celebrated 5 years cancer free, and we were talking about that next checkbox of kids, right? And we had started to try even, and about 2 months after that 5 year cancer free mark, um, she started feeling pain. And right before, actually, we did a trip to Jordan and in Egypt in the Middle East. There, we did that trip, and during that whole trip, she had this hip pain, this lower back pain, and at first we weren't really concerned, but it wasn't going away. And when we got back from the trip, it's when very quickly they told us that the cancer was back, and that she had at most a year to live. From that point, it was 5 months until she passed away in August of 2023. Since then, I've been lost. um, I haven't really known what to do with myself, and I've been trying um, to find purpose or find meaning in my days, and trying to find ways to grieve well. And people tell me they're proud of me. They tell me that I'm doing the right things. They tell me that I'm doing everything I can, and maybe that's true. It's just, yeah, the truth is, each day is its own challenge as I figure out what comes next, and I don't know. I'm just, this is a new thing to try, something else to try. Yeah, there are lots of different ideas of things you can try to do as you grieve, but I don't think there's one right way for everyone. Everyone grieves differently, and everybody experiences that loss differently. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the trauma of last year, and there's so much. I know you've got a bunch of questions for me that eventually I'm sure we'll talk about. That will be really hard for me to talk about because the trauma of being a caregiver for someone in palliative care. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm me personally is I suffered the most here. I didn't. Like, Amy suffered the most, and seeing her in pain was hard. I wish I could have taken that away from her, but yeah, that's all part of the story here of what it means to walk that journey with someone you love. So there'll be lots to say about that, I'm sure, to come.
Yeah, another episode. I feel like that's that could take up a whole episode in itself.
One or two or three or four or five episodes, yeah.
Does it bug you when people say they're proud of you?
That's a great question.
Like, what's your first thought? Like,
yes, and
first thing.
Yeah, yes, yes and no. My first thought was a little bit because what am I really doing? Truthfully, I'm not really doing a lot, right? My days are quiet, and I'm not. I don't know. I get why people say it, and I don't fault them for it. I know their intention is to show love. So any amount that it bugs me is minimal. It just, yeah, I don't feel good about doing grief well. You know, does that make any sense? It's not, it feels like I can't really do it well. So how can it be something that someone is proud of? Because you don't really, yeah, I don't think grief is something that you can be successful in. Does that make sense?
No, I think it shows like where you're. Like from my perspective, it just kind of shows like where you're at. Like I think, like if I'm hearing you correctly, yeah. Like when you started this podcast, you were probably not like, yeah, like a little celebratory, you know, like I'm starting something. You were probably just like, yeah, great, something to probably take my mind off this horrible thing in the back of my mind that's constantly there. So, you know, from my perspective, and probably other people's, not knowing what to say, you know, to people who are going through, you know, terrible grief of losing their spouse. I mean, and they just say things, you know, like I've almost said, I'm proud of you. But
so from your perspective, like what makes you want to say that to me?
there was one moment that I wanted to say it to you, and that was hearing you speak and do her obituary. And it was probably the saddest and most loving thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I cried the whole time. If she was there, she would have loved it. That's a proud moment, and I think maybe you can't see that in that moment, and I don't blame you for that. But I think everyone around you was just like, wow, you know, like that took so much to do that. So again, like we're all looking in, right? Like we've talked about it so much before, not knowing what to say or how to say it. And I don't know, over the 5 months of talking to you, I'm just going to be myself. I'm just going to keep it basic and just be like, but I've had to catch myself too, you know, like, so I don't know, stick to the basics, stick to, I love you, I'll support you, I'll listen, whatever you need. Or if you don't want to talk, great. No worries. No pressure.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Jason. I should just be really clear. Like, it's not that I get mad if people
No,
say
I
they're
know.
proud of me or any of that. Yeah, like that moment you brought up of giving her eulogy, that makes sense to me. Not to try and like heap my own praise, but like that was a moment or a hard thing that I had to do, and to do that felt like an accomplishment in a way. Like I got through it, in front of 500 people plus 1,000 more online, right? Like to be able to speak to her life, um, was an honor to me, and I didn't take that lightly, and so that does mean a lot to me to hear that from you. And I think more I would react with a little bit of like a eye roll if it's just like I'm just doing the normal things of life and someone says, "Oh, I'm proud of you for doing that." Like I know what they mean and
Yeah.
I get it. It just seems like the bar for me is so low. It's like, "Oh, you got out of the house today. Like I'm proud of you." It's like, "Yeah, okay." And and um and you know what? Like some days that is an accomplishment. So maybe I should feel good about that, but it just again that bar feels so low. So I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, that
Yeah.
speaks to, like you said before, like trying to keep it together and show you that you're strong. And, it's okay. I could tell you this until, I'm blue in the face, but it's okay, like those small victories are important. They really are. As someone who's dealt with depression for the last 3 months, sometimes it's the smallest things that mean a lot or to celebrate a victory. So I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I hope that you can see all those things as not victories, but just, you're going in a direction. Like I said
Yeah.
before, sometimes it's a step forward, sometimes it's a step back, but it's a direction, it's not always the best or things positive, but
Yeah, for sure.
so
I feel, see, this is, how earlier I was like, oh, I'm worried about how, I guess, judgment for my answers or what I feel or how I come across. Like, now I feel bad. Like, what if someone's told me they're proud of me and then they think I'm talking directly to them? I just want to be really clear. I'm not thinking of any one person. There wasn't like one moment that someone said that to me, but it is something that a lot of people do say to me. And again, I think the intention or like you said, uh, it's okay to take, um, to feel good about those small victories. And yeah, yeah, I do believe in that too. So
yeah.
to all those people who've said that to me, thank you. I know that you love me, and I appreciate that. So
We'll put your names in the credits to show you that we were upset with you. No, just
oh
I'm
boy.
kidding. I'm very much kidding.
Yeah.
I read things often very wrong. I'm like a textbook overthinker, so yeah. My wife's always the one who's just like, "No, you're overthinking this. Like, it's probably fine." He's probably not upset with what you're saying. I've had to
Well,
even text to
so
you,
Jason,
so
yeah, I was just gonna say, I think last time you sent me a text. I didn't mean it like this.
I
Like,
know
it's
such an
okay, man. I
overthinker.
know, I know, I
I'm
know.
working on it. I'm working on it. So
I'm the same. So
it's all about being able to recognize a bit of people's intentionality, like you said too, right? I'm sure it's a lot of people for you, so it's a
yeah,
good it's a good thing to remember intentionality, and not everything's a hill to die on these days. So
that's right. Yeah.
yeah,
Should we take a quick break and then we can come back and wrap things up?
yeah, I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what to say.
I think this is a good place to stop. I'm sure we'll be doing another episode and we can go into more details about the traumas and what we faced over the last 5 or 6 years. But yeah, why don't we just end it with maybe what our goal is in this podcast? What's your goal, Jordan? What are you trying to accomplish in this podcast? Doing this
Yeah,
podcast, I mean.
yeah. I think I kind of shared a lot of it is just for myself, trying to for my own wellness as I try and process everything that's happened and not just process what has happened, but also think ahead and think about what is coming up next, knowing that through experience, none of this is what I predicted would happen, and I have no idea what will come next. But um, so that's a big part of it. It's just my own personal wellness. But I do think the more I talk with people, especially about these real issues, I use the word grit or the gritty issues, right? The things that um, there are a lot of people in the world that deal with these hard things. And so, as a bit of a side goal beyond just myself, I do think when you hear other people or you get to talk to other people who have also experienced loss and grief and trauma and I don't know, there's an understanding there. There's there's the ability to see people and to be seen and maybe just maybe for one person they'll feel connected or they'll feel seen. That's such an education word that we use with students all the time. They'll feel seen. But like, yeah, I need to feel seen more than ever before. I feel that loss, and I maybe other people will feel that too through this. I know one of the names we had kicked around for this podcast was United in Grief, right? And yeah, I think that's just one of my goals for this is that somehow this would help with that unity for you and I, but also for people who might end up listening, somehow stumble upon this and listen to us ramble on. So yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I think my major goal is just being open and honest and vulnerable about hard topics in my life and spend a long time holding a lot of trauma in from a lot of parts of my life. So yeah, I look forward. I don't look forward. I said that before. In a way, I do. It's like kind of like good and bad. I look forward to talking about things, but then once I get to them, I realize how much like how tough it really is.
Mm,
Even this first episode, I thought was tough.
yeah.
But like you said, that uniting in grief, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything like that, but this I've said this to my wife plenty of times. Just talking to you for the last 5 months, and just being able to hear about your grief, it's another feeling. I I don't know how to explain it. All I can explain it is I'm just happy that you're willing to talk to me and we're willing to be real with each other and I think there's just something to that. And like you said, I think if we can help someone else who's going through this, then that's great. And that's all I've wanted to do from the beginning. If this helps one person, like you said, to be seen or to feel slightly better from where they are, then that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just keep it real,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, it's
open and
easy.
honest.
Yeah, yeah. It's easy to get too far ahead and think about all the possible things we could talk about or all the possible things that you might be able to accomplish or do through something like this and that's really not what this is about. It's not for yeah we've said this to each other, I know, but it's really in the end it's just for us, right, to experience even a little bit of healing and a little bit of togetherness through this and support each other and be there for each other and whatever happens outside of that, it's kind of like a bonus, honestly. So
Yeah, no, I agree. Glad we kind of just did it step by step.
yeah,
That's it's been helpful for me. So
this first one, yeah, like you said, it's been hard to do, I think, to kind of get to this point, to just like cross that line of action and just try it. I think that's not an easy step to take that last step. So maybe with the theme of saying we're proud of each other, Jason, I'm proud of you for being here with me right now. And thanks for doing this with me, brother.
Yeah, appreciate those words. Proud of you too. Thanks for listening, whoever is listening.
We'll see you next time.
Next time.
This is Not Part of the Plan.